Hello everyone, Fox here, and it's time to take a look at the 6 Echo series weapons that you can obtain in the Heartland DLC for State of Decay 2. The Heartland DLC is not included on the Season Pass. It costs $10 on its own, but it is included in the Microsoft Ultimate Games Pass. The reason you might care about these weapons is because, one, they're kind of the only really permanent, valuable items that you can actually take from Heartland back to the main game, and some of them are very unique, one of a kind that don't have any other weapons similar to them. So who knows, maybe you have some of these weapons and didn't realize that some of them are pretty interesting, or maybe you didn't obtain these weapons and you have a reason to go back and try to get them to bring back to your community. Speaking of bringing things back to your community, in order to transfer the weapons out of Heartland, you will need the assistance of a second player. You'll have to invite this person into your Heartland game, give them the weapons, and then load up the save file where you want the weapons, and then you'll have to invite that player who will then give them back to you. So obviously there is a chance they could just steal your items, so make sure that second player is someone you trust. Now let's quickly talk about where you get these items in the game if you do want to try and farm them up, and the answer is from any military-themed looting location. So that means stuff like military blockades, military tents, military forts, anything that is military-themed can have these items in them. The drops are completely random, so you might get none of the weapons, you might get a whole bunch of duplicates, you might conveniently get one of each. It's entirely random. If there is a specific one that you're going after and you don't mind restarting the game, what you can do is just transfer all of the weapons that you do want into another save file with the assistance of a friend, restart the game, and just hit the 2 really dense, accessible areas full of military outposts. Right outside of Jurassic Junction, there is a pair. There is a military blockade and a military tent. After that, just go right into Marshall, where there's just a whole bunch of military locations there. So hit the location right out of Jurassic Junction, hit Marshall, and then just reset the game and try again if you don't get what you're looking for. Don't worry about literally hitting every single military site on the entire map. Just hit the areas that are of high density, and if you don't get what you want, reset and try again. This will give you the highest drops per minute. Alrighty though, now we can begin. What makes these Echo weapons so special? Why is it worth it to make a video about these 6 Echo series guns? Well, the weapons get their name from the government-funded Echo Lab, which was a research group that Dr. Hoffman in the Heartland was a part of, specifically making anti-zombie weapons. So these 6 Echo series guns are specifically designed to kill zombies. They are specifically designed to counter the zombie threat, and as a result, they all have one thing in common. Every single one of them has an integrated suppressor, which has led to some weapon combinations that are not available anywhere else in the game. The advantage of an integrated silencer is that normally if you attach a silencer onto a weapon, it increases the amount of durability damage to the weapon per shot. In other words, firing a gun without a suppressor should last longer than attaching a suppressor. It should break down and require repairs sooner. So theoretically, these weapons should be much easier to maintain. They should be much more durable per shot, and also they're all silenced, which is really nice, especially in Nightmare Zone. You want to be aware of how much noise you're creating. And as I've said earlier, it has led to silenced weapon combinations that have not previously existed in the game, which makes some of these weapons very curious. So what we're going to do is go over each weapon. I will show you its stats in comparison to common counterparts. We'll test how effective it is to have this silenced weapon versus a common unsilenced counterpart. We'll look at how sluggish or how quick the weapon reloads, and then we'll move into the combat tests. We're going to be testing how effective the weapon is at neutralizing zombies from stealth, including a marksman test. But we'll also test the weapon against aggressive zombies, because sometimes you're not quiet and they catch you, so you need to fight with the zombies coming at you. And then we'll round it up with a firepower test against a juggernaut. Once we've covered all 6 of the weapons, I'll create a tier list and organize them so that you can see which weapons I think are the really good ones and which ones I think weren't so good. As a quick aside, there are some important things that you should know if you're playing on the Nightmare Zone, because I am doing this review from the perspective of Normal Zone, and this part is really important. In Nightmare Zone, everything is a lot louder, so I've taken a selection of weapons from completely silent to maximum loudness so that you can see the difference on Nightmare Zone. I want you to especially pay attention to the Sleeper Cell PPK. This is the weapon that I have an advanced silencer on, so you can see what a silenced weapon is like on Nightmare Zone, and you're going to find that it's about 3 times as loud as a silenced weapon on Standard Zone. Meanwhile, other weapons in Nightmare Zone without a silencer can be so loud that their sound waves actually blow past the minimap completely, and I can open up the overall map and you can see just how wide the sound is. So keep in mind when you see the sound test for the various Echo weapons that they're going to be about 3 times louder if you're using them on the Nightmare Zone.
Sure could use some help over here.
Alright, so first up we have the Echo S1 Revolver. We're just going to drop the S in the name, so just the Echo 1 Revolver. You can see it here on our tester's hip, Cruz. He has maximum skill in regular shooting, but he has not picked an advanced specialization, giving us the most vanilla of weapon tests. This is a 22 caliber sighted revolver, and since it's an Echo weapon, it does have the built-in silencer, making it the only silenced revolver in the entire game because you cannot put silencers on revolvers. Being a revolver means it's exempt from weapon damage. You will never have to spend 1 part on repairing this weapon. It'll never break down, and 22 caliber bullets are both the weakest but also the least expensive bullets to craft. And all zombies die in 1 headshot from any caliber of bullet except for Juggernauts and Blood Ferals, and Blood Ferals currently don't exist in the base game. Compared to 2 other ordinary revolvers, you'll see that the Echo S1 is probably the weakest revolver in the game in terms of raw power, coming in lower than even the SP-101 Devlet 22 caliber revolver. And it's quite a bit weaker than the Viper, a much heavier revolver weapon. However, neither of those are capable of being silenced, leading to the question, is it going to matter that the Echo S1 is the lowest power revolver in the game? So first, when looking at the sound generation when these guns are fired, you're going to find that both the Devlet SP1 and the Viper create massive sound waves that just travel past the boundaries of your minimap. And my pace came under attack as a result of just shooting these weapons, just showing how loud they are and how much attention they're going to grab on Standard Zone. Whereas when we shoot the Echo S1, it barely makes any noise at all. It's not completely silent, but it's very quiet. But let's take this gun for a spin. First, we will examine its stealth-killing properties. Against regular zombies, as I said, the caliber of the bullet, the power of the weapon doesn't come into play. 1 headshot and you've killed a zombie. What I did notice, though, is that the weapon has quite a bit of sway, so the crosshair moves around quite a bit. And while the weapon can zoom, it's not like a really strong zoom. However, it's still very useful because it tightens the crosshairs. And especially when you're shooting from stealth and you have time to line up your shots, the zoom in is actually really good, not so much to engage long distance zombies, but just to confirm kills on close range zombies. That said, it can be used to engage zombies at a farther range, but I found it to be a bit frustrating to wrestle with the gun sway, so I wouldn't recommend it except against really clean shots. That said, it performed very well here as a stealth weapon, so let's move on to aggressive attacking zombies. This is where the weapon shows some problems, mainly in the form of reloading. Being a revolver, they naturally have a sluggish reloading time, and only someone with the gunslinging skill, which allows you to reload super quick, is really going to feel good with this weapon. And the reload time is significant enough that you will be doing quite a bit of running away when you do have to reload. However, when you are shooting, the weapon feels really good. Semi-automatic, accurate enough without the zoom when you're under attack. And the recoil is pretty slight, so overall it actually performs very well under pressure. It's just the problem that it takes forever to reload. But once again, you can neutralize that with gunslinging. So if you've got better aim than me, and hey, I've got pretty average aim, this weapon should not let you down, especially if you've got a gunslinger to speed up that reload time. Finally, let's test it out against a Juggernaut. This is where we would expect the low power of the weapon to start holding it back. To my surprise, though, the weapon actually handled the Juggernaut a lot better than I thought. The main weakness we had here is that you had to reload it frequently, but once again, if you had a gunslinger, it wouldn't take long to make those reloads. But when all is said and done, the Juggernaut took 35 rounds from the Echo 1 to bring down. These were all body shots, and I did not put any rounds into the Juggernaut during his staggered state once he's taken enough damage. I don't shoot into the Juggernaut when he staggers because he seems to be invulnerable in those periods of time to all but a few weapons. So I didn't resume shooting at him until he fully recovered from his stagger animation and began moving towards me. 35 shots, though, that's pretty outstanding, I would say. And it goes against what you would expect from this weapon in that it has the lowest power of all the revolvers, lower than even the Devilet SP-101. Needless to say, I was quite surprised. Anyways, let's take a look at a reload test so we can see the amount of time it takes with and without gunslinging. Fortunately, Adobe Premiere Pro can help us out here because I can look at the gun animations under a speed of 60 frames per second, and what we see here is that the reloading speed without gunslinging is 6 seconds and 13 frames. So basically 6 seconds and 1/6 of a second. But with gunslinging, it took 2 seconds and 32 frames, so basically 2.5 seconds to reload, so a massive difference. That's basically a 2/3 reduction in the animation time, so I highly recommend that if you want to use this weapon, you gotta use it with gunslinging. It neutralizes really its only main weakness. Anyways, let's move on to the next weapon, the Echo 2 rifle, which is a 22 caliber bolt-action rifle, the only one of its kind. There are 22 caliber rifles, but none of them are also bolt-action. Being a bolt-action weapon means it shares the same characteristic with a revolver in that it has no durability damage whatsoever. You'll never ever spend a single part repairing this weapon, and it will never break down. It's also shooting the very inexpensive 22 caliber bullets, the cheapest bullets in the game. And once again, compared to other 22 caliber rifles, we're seeing a noticeable reduction in power to the 1022, the Exterminator 1022, and the Prepper's 1022. These weapons, however, can have a silencer added onto them, so the main advantage of this rifle is that it's going to be parts efficient. You'll never have to repair it. During the sound test, I found that the 22 caliber rifles, when unsilenced, make way less noise than the revolvers. However, you can attach a silencer onto these, so that is a weakness that can be mitigated. And of course, when compared to the automatically silenced Echo S1, it is quite a bit quieter, but like I said, you could put a silencer on those other rifles. How is this weapon going to perform out in the field, though? When engaging from stealth, this weapon really shines. The scope on it is really nice, not quite sniper range, but still very good, and it tightens the crosshairs up to pinpoint accuracy. There is a negligible amount of recoil and hardly any weapon sway, meaning you are going to be very accurate with this weapon. It is extremely deadly against unalerted zombies. On the other hand, this weapon is really awkward to use against alerted zombies. You get hit by two issues here. One, it's bolt action, so every time you miss, you really feel the punishment on it. And on top of that, it actually takes a good amount of time to reload. So reloading and missing feels really, really bad. Unless you've got really good aim, under pressure, this weapon is going to feel very sluggish and awkward to use against alerted zombies. So I really can't stress enough that you use this weapon from stealth. You might even consider bringing the Echo S1 Revolver as a backup weapon since they use the same ammo and you could swap to it to engage in close combat if you wanted to. I can't stress it enough, this weapon was clearly designed to be used from stealth against unalerted zombies. If you can find even something like a feral and it doesn't know you're there, this weapon has both the steadiness and the accuracy. It has the zoom to pick off those ferals. How about against a juggernaut, though? I was able to engage this juggernaut entirely from stealth, which was ideal due to the slow fire rate and the slow reload rate. And overall, it took me 40 rounds to bring this juggernaut down, so really not too many more shots than the revolver. But it did take a lot longer due to, as I said, the slow fire rate and reloading. However, I was able to very easily take it down from range. Certainly you would need a decent quantity of ammo, but that's true of a lot of weapons, honestly, so I wouldn't really count this to be a bad weapons test, especially for a weapon that is supposed to be quite a bit weaker than other weapons, and it's a .22 caliber weapon, which is already the weakest bullet. So overall, the execution of the Juggernaut honestly wasn't that bad, especially if you're someone who does carry a decent amount of ammunition on you. It's just going to take a little while due to the slow fire rate of the weapon. Speaking of sluggish things, going back to home base, we tested the reloading speed of the Echo 2 bolt-action rifle, and I found that without gunslinging, it took 4 seconds and 24 frames, so basically 4.5 seconds to reload. But with gunslinging, it only took 1 and 39 frames to reload, so basically 1 and 2/3 a second. This is a huge improvement in reload time. Once again, nearly 2/3 a reduction in reloading speed. So I highly recommend both gunslinging and stealth or scouting when using the Echo 2. Alright though, it's time to move on to the next weapon, the Echo 3 shotgun. Yes indeed, it is the game's first and only silenced shotgun. This is a pump-action shotgun. You gotta feed the shells one at a time, and it can store 4 shells at most, so I believe it's also the shotgun with the lowest ammo capacity. For comparison, we'll be taking a look at the common Model 870, and then one of the DLC weapons, the AA-12, an automatic shotgun. You can see that while the Echo 3 is powerful, it is definitely a good notch below the typical shotgun, which has a max power rating. And when fired, you will see that all shotguns are quite noisy. They cannot have a silencer attached to them, and their sound generation is basically the length of the minimap, a little shorter than it. However, when you use the Echo 3 shotgun, it doesn't make very much noise at all. In fact, I'd say it's pretty similar to all of these silenced weapons. So, could it be possible to make a stealth shotgun playstyle? Well, it's time to take it in the field and find out. This is also the first of the weapons that actually take durability damage, so if any of them break down during the trials, I'll be sure to let you know. Anyways, here's the way it works fighting with the shotgun from stealth. It can be done, there's no doubt about that. However, your results are probably not going to be super great. The reason for this is simply because, well, it's a shotgun, so in order to score those headshots, you do have to close the distance a lot more than other weapons, and having a silencer equipped does not mean completely silent. So the issue is that what happens is the maximum distance that you can score a headshot is not a whole lot farther than the distance that the sound makes when you shoot. So if you're fighting one straggler zombie, yeah, you just blast it, and even if there are zombies relatively close, sure, they're not going to hear it. But if you're engaging a cluster of zombies and you shoot one of them, it's really likely that the other zombies are going to hear your shot and they're going to come to investigate and spot you. Or when you pull the trigger again, when they are coming to investigate, then they're definitely going to hear the sound of the shotgun, even though it's silenced, because you have to get really close to them. So this shotgun isn't really going to be killing enemies from crouched like other stealth weapons. However, it does still function, but in a different way. What this weapon does do is it allows you to shoot zombies with a shotgun, even if they do detect you, without worrying that the loudness of the shotgun will pull even further and more distant enemies into the fight. In other words, you can basically kind of fight out in the open and just shoot zombies with a shotgun without worry that, I don't know, the nearby infestation or the nearby horde is going to hear you. It's not perfect, though, because one of the zombies could scream, and especially on Nightmare Zone, a regular zombie screaming is still super loud, and it's not going to matter that your shotgun has a silencer on it. So overall, it is awkward to use this in a stealth manner, but it still kind of works. So what about in open combat against aggressive attacking zombies? And, well, it's a shotgun, so it's not too hard to score headshots, but the real problem is the reloading. It only has 4 shells before you have to reload, and it's not magazine fed, so you gotta reload the shells one at a time, and that just takes a really long time. So on the one hand, you shouldn't have trouble scoring your headshots, but on the other hand, you're going to just be reloading like crazy, and a weapon with a higher capacity with more accuracy requirement, like the Echo 1 Revolver, could definitely be more effective in close combat than this shotgun, especially if you have good aim. So if you've got decent aim, this shotgun probably won't be too attractive. So overall, it does work in open combat, but it definitely feels really awkward having to constantly reload after every 4 shots, especially when you move from battle to battle. It's not like you can reload to a much higher capacity. The 4 shell limitation, it definitely makes the gun a lot more frustrating to use. Now on to the Juggernaut test. How good was this weapon against the Juggernaut? Let me tell you, it took a pretty long time to bring it down because of the amount of reloading. We'll have to see how good gunslinging affects the weapon because, man, it took a while to bring it down. However, how many shells did it take? And the answer is a clean, even 36, meaning I had to reload the weapon an additional 8 times after shooting the first 4 shells. It was at this point that I found it curious that it doesn't really seem like it matters what gun we use, whether we use the revolver, the bolt-action rifle, or the shotgun. The Juggernaut keeps taking about 35 to 40 rounds to bring down. Overall, I mean, it will kill the Juggernaut. I wouldn't consider it to be super efficient. Not in terms of ammo. The ammo consumption is pretty normal, but in terms of time, it just takes so long to bring it down. Maybe if we have gunslinging, it would be more viable. So let's head back to base and find out. And here are the results. Without gunslinging and reloading from 0 to 4 shells, it took 4 seconds and 31 frames, so basically 4.5 seconds. With gunslinging, it took 2 seconds and 49 frames, so basically 2 seconds and 5/6 of a second, which translates to a faster reload time of 1 second and 41 frames faster, or you could say a little more than 1.5 seconds shaved off the reloading time with gunslinging. The reduction didn't feel as impactful as it does on other weapons. However, it still felt really good to quickly load the shells in. However, if you're not impressed by shaving off basically 1.5 seconds, you could also go with sharpshooting. Sharpshooting takes the approach where it's not about reloading faster, it's about killing as many zombies in a single pull of a trigger because it will allow all of the pellets to pass through multiple zombies, allowing you to blast holes through the swarms of their ranks. So those are the 2 skills that I would personally go for if you wanted to make extensive use of this weapon. Now it's time to move on though to the Echo 4 submachine gun. This weapon has 30 rounds in its magazine. It shoots 9mm bullets. It has a sight on it allowing you to zoom in a bit, and it also has a fire selector that shoots either semi-automatic or on 2-round burst, but no automatic. Compared to other 9mm weapons such as the G17, the SP5K Custom, and the MP5A2, this weapon also has less power per shot than the others. So it's continuing the trend, but once again, I'm beginning to doubt that that's really going to matter. All three of those previously mentioned weapons can accept a silencer, so they aren't necessarily left out of the stealth equation, but hopefully the advantage of the integrated silencer on the Echo S4 will carry it. When firing without a silencer, these weapons are pretty noisy. The sound waves travel about 75% of the minimap's distance. And of course, the Echo 4, when firing, barely makes a peep. Not completely silent, but barely any sound at all. But once again, let me reiterate that all three of those weapons are also capable of attaching a silencer. Let's see how this weapon performs out in the field, though. And the first thing I noticed, and it was actually kind of jarring, is that this weapon pretty much has no recoil whatsoever. Combine this with reasonable range out to sort of a short to early mid-range, and the ability to zoom in, and this weapon is going to pop heads very easily if you can get used to the fact that it actually doesn't have any recoil and there's nothing to compensate for. There is a decent amount of sway to the weapon, so it's clearly not designed to snipe enemies at a long distance, but you really don't need to. It's plenty quiet, and it's plenty accurate enough to easily remove zombies at a close to early mid-range, no questions asked. In fact, I found the 2-round burst to basically be a complete waste against regular zombies, because you're basically just placing 2 bullets in the exact same place because there's just no recoil on the weapon. In alerted close combat, this weapon had absolutely no trouble at all. It's still extremely accurate at close range, whether you are using the sight or not. It has 30 rounds in the magazine, so as long as you have the accuracy, this weapon will have no trouble at all busting up zombies, no matter the number. It really shined in this indoor situation once I had gotten the hang of not needing to compensate for the recoil, or rather the lack of recoil. You're just able to pop the zombie's head off one after the other in these indoor situations where all their heads are basically stacked up, and it felt really good. It felt really good to just blast these zombies so efficiently. What's more is the default reload on this weapon still felt really good, even without Gunslinger. It doesn't take very long to reload, so it's really got a lot going for it. Finally, though, let's see how it performs against the Juggernaut, and overall it took 37 rounds to bring it down. I was shooting on 2-round bursts, so some of the shots might have been wasted, but 37 is within that probable range between like 35 and 40, so very consistent. The thing, though, was the speed at which I took the Juggernaut down was extremely impressive. This weapon shredded the Juggernaut easily in one full mag, a reload, and then just a few more bursts afterwards. I was shocked at how quickly the Juggernaut went down. Easily the fastest kill of all the weapons so far. Back at home base to test the time it takes to reload, I found that without gunslinging, the Echo 4 took 2 seconds and 38 frames, so basically 2 2/3 a second time to reload. With gunslinging, I found it took 1 second and 38 frames, so 1 2/3 seconds to reload, and that means it has a very nice, clean 1 second shaved off the reloading time when you've got gunslinging. This weapon feels pretty comfortable to reload without gunslinging. That said, an extra second saved on reloading still feels super good, plus you've got the aim snap for headshots. That said, if you did want to use something like weapons handling, that wouldn't be a bad idea to help with the weapon's durability. That said, I also would say that the weapon was pretty durable. At no point in time did it break down. I do repair in between the trials, but still, the weapon held together. But now it's time to move on to the Echo 6 pistol. Don't be confused by me skipping over 5. There is an Echo S5, but it's not in Heartland. It was actually added much earlier in the Zed Hunter update, and it's a very different weapon. It doesn't have the whole silenced theme like these weapons do. It is a gas grenade launcher, as in it shoots poison gas grenades. But that's why we are skipping from the Echo 4 directly into the Echo 6, because it is not available in the Heartland DLC. You can get it in the base game for free. So the Echo 6 pistol, this is an 8-round 45 caliber pistol. This weapon doesn't have any additional special features besides the integrated silencer. There's no special sight, no scope, and there's no fire selector, so it's just semi-automatic fire. And we're going to be comparing it to a few other common 45 caliber weapons, the M1911, the Civilian Vector Ultra Compact, and the MAC-10. And what you're going to see here is there's definitely a reduction in power. This is becoming a repetitive theme, probably not something you are surprised by now. I'll also say that the durability is a bit low. It's not too much lower than these existing weapons, but even these weapons are a bit low on durability. In the sound test, I remember these three weapons could have a silencer placed on them. It looks like their sound range unsilenced is about 75% of the minimap's distance. That seems to be a really standard sound level for most weapons. While, of course, the Echo 6 barely makes a peep when it shoots. However, once again, these other weapons would be capable of equipping a silencer, so it's not an exclusive bonus to the Echo 6. But let's see how this weapon performs out in the field. So first, in the stealth test, this weapon did run into some problems. The first issue is that the weapon has okay accuracy, but because it doesn't have a sight, you can't zoom in to tighten the aim. In addition to that, it kicks pretty hard, so you're going to have to do a lot more retargeting between every single shot. And that naturally leads to you having to shoot a bit slower in order to actually get your crosshairs on the zombies. And the extra power is no benefit against the common zombie. They die in one hit regardless of the bullet you're using. But the most notable thing of all, against this really basic test against an infestation, the weapon started to break down. The only weapon that has had this problem thus far. In alerted aggressive combat, some of the weapon's weaknesses are negated. For example, once the enemies are really close to you, I found that the kick doesn't really make too much of a difference. And the weapon reloads at a decent pace without gunslinging, so it didn't feel like a burden to reload it in the middle of combat. So what I felt about this weapon was that it was similar to the shotgun in that they both felt much better in active combat when the zombies are coming towards you. However, once again, the power is wasted. The zombies here, they die in one headshot regardless, so it didn't feel like it really had any advantage over the Echo 1, except perhaps the reloading time if you didn't have a gunslinger. There's also that looming concern that the gun is going to break down after the first trial, so that was another thing that was constantly in the back of my mind. I didn't feel confident when I was wielding this weapon, because I was always worried that it was going to start breaking down. Finally, we got to the Juggernaut. How did the Echo 6 work here? Well, I found that the gun took 40 rounds to bring the Juggernaut down. Now, I do feel like I may have plugged a few extra shots into the Juggernaut during its invulnerability phase. However, even if we factor for that, it's still in that very consistent range of the Juggernaut going down in about 35 to 40 rounds, regardless of the ammo type being used, which once again suggests that the additional power of this weapon doesn't matter. The weapon also began to break down at the very end of the fight. Meaning this weapon definitely would not have been able to handle both the Juggernaut and any zombies that were in the area. It also would have had a lot of problems if you plugged more shots into the Juggernaut during its invulnerability phase. This weapon seems like it definitely needs someone who has weapons handling in order to use effectively, because it simply breaks down too quickly. Back at base, testing the reload animation time, I found that without gunslinging, it took 3 seconds and 15 frames, so basically 3 1/4 seconds to reload. With gunslinging, it took 1 and 36 frames, so basically 1.5 seconds to reload, meaning the amount of time you save with gunslinging was 1 second and 38 frames. So basically 1 2/3 a second faster reloading time, which basically we can say it reloads 50% faster with gunslinging. So for this weapon, while gunslinging does have a really good effect on its ability to reload faster, it definitely, I think, is more advantageous to go with weapons handling because this weapon just needs the bonus durability and you need to be able to unjam it when it breaks. Alright though, it's time to move on to the final weapon, the Echo 7 Assault Rifle. This weapon has 30 of the 556 rounds in the magazine, and it has all 3 of the modes of fire, semi-automatic, burst, and fully automatic, but it doesn't have a scope or a sight on it, so no zoom. Compared to some of the other 556 weapons, such as the Bolt Scout, the AR-15, and another DLC weapon, the X-36C, you'll see, once again, the reduction in damage compared to most common weapons, but look, its damage is on par with the X-36C, although the X-36C seems to be better in just about every other way, which I guess protects the value of this as a pre-order bonus DLC weapon. And once again, when we test this weapon, we see the very common about 75% the range of the minimap for when you shoot an unsilenced weapon. Also consistent is the silence sound range, both from the Echo 7 and from the X-36C, common to all of the weapons we've tested so far. But now it's time to take it out into the field, into the first test, the stealth and range test, emphasis on range. After using so many of the weapons, I was pretty confident that this weapon would have no trouble at neutralizing enemies from stealth at a more close range, but because it doesn't have a sight or a scope to zoom in with, I was not as confident about firing at a range. And the test quickly demonstrated that to be a really good concern, because it was really difficult to engage zombies at a more medium range, not even a long range, just a mid-range. It certainly can be done, but the weapon clearly is not good at it. On the other hand, the recoil isn't bad, and the sway on the crosshair also isn't too bad. But the lack of a sight or a scope is definitely a limiting factor on this weapon, and it's going to make it difficult to differentiate it from other rifles that you can just add a silencer to. Against aggressive zombies, it really should come as no surprise that this weapon had really no trouble at all. The recoil isn't that bad, it's got great accuracy up close, and with the semi-automatic fire, you'll be able to dispatch the close-range zombies without any trouble at all. In addition to that, the reloading time, even without Gunslinger, felt really comfortable, and I wasn't burdened by it even in the slightest. I also wanted to see if the automatic fire would be beneficial against regular zombies, since, well, it's the only automatic weapon of the Echo series, and the answer was no. Once you begin shooting an automatic, the bloom is just too much. The bullets just go all over the place, you're going to miss a ton, score a bunch of body shots, and you're just trying to get headshots. That's all you really care about. And in the end, it felt like it was just a huge waste of ammo. It would have been way better just to shoot in the semi-automatic mode. Lastly, of course, we have the Juggernaut test, and I found that it took 42 bullets approximately. I wasn't able to get as perfect of a reading because I wanted to shoot in fully automatic mode to fully take advantage of the weapon, and it's very likely that I plugged some extra ammo into the Juggernaut during its invulnerable phase. However, even if we knock a few bullets off, it's still very nicely in that range of the 35 to 40 rounds needed to bring down the Juggernaut, which ultimately suggests that it really didn't matter what kind of bullet you were firing from any of these weapons, they killed the Juggernaut very similarly in effectiveness. That said, this weapon definitely was more time efficient for removing the Juggernaut, and that's because, one, it's got the fully automatic fire, it's got a lot of rounds in the magazine, so you're not constantly reloading. And when you do reload, the weapon has a very comfortable reloading rate, so all that combined meant that the Juggernaut went down very quickly, despite taking the same amount of ammo. Now back at base, it was time to see how long it takes to go through the reloading animation, and I found that without gunslinging, it took 3 seconds and 59 frames to reload, so basically 4 seconds. It actually kind of surprised me. I didn't think it was that long, but maybe it's because the reload animation itself is fairly smooth looking and gives it the impression that it's faster than it looks. Then I tried it with gunslinging, and I found the time was 1 second and 38 frames, so basically 1 2/3 a second reload speed. And that means that you save 2 seconds and 20 frames, so 2 1/3 a second when you use gunslinging. And wow, that actually makes a ton of a difference. You're shaving nearly 2/3 of the time off the original reload with gunslinging, so yeah, I actually would advise using gunslinging with this weapon. So, we have taken a look at all of the Echo weapons. Now it's time to draw a conclusion, and we're going to do things a little differently this time. I have created a tier list. Yes, indeed, presenting Fox's 200 IQ tier list for the Echo series weapons of Heartland. From the bottom to the top, the tiers are... this gun sucks. WTF, Tomcat. What is this gun even? Normal SpongeBob. Average weapons for average folks. Mind-blowing, amazing weapons for amazing people. And finally, 200 IQ. That's how much IQ you have if you use these weapons. So the rules are, I'm going to use each tier at least once. So there's 5 tiers and 6 weapons, meaning 1 weapon will fall into each tier and one of the tiers will have 2. And then I'll go ahead and tell you why I put the weapon in the tier. Let's go ahead and go from the bottom rating all the way up to the top so we save the best for last. So starting at the bottom tier, which weapon really sucked? And that's going to go to... Echo S6 pistol. There is pretty much no reason to use this weapon over any other pistol that you could just put a silencer on. It really doesn't bring anything unique to the table. It's got really ordinary accuracy. It's just as silenced as another weapon. It breaks down very quickly. And the extra power you get from a 45 caliber weapon is negated because it just has lower power than usual. And in the end, it didn't even matter what bullets we shot at the juggernauts. It seemed to be the same regardless. So this weapon really, it just seems worse than other pistols that you could use. So you just wouldn't want to use this weapon. What the Echo S6 really needed to actually be decent is it needed a sight on it so that you could actually shoot more accurately, and it needs to not break down immediately. The next tier, though, for WTF is this, that's going to be the Echo S3 shotgun. I really didn't want to put the shotgun this low because it is the first silenced shotgun, and it was kind of fun to use, but honestly, it's just not good. It doesn't have enough range to take advantage of its stealth feature. You have to just reload it all the time because it can only hold 4 shells. You got to put the shells in manually, but it will still allow you to safely use a shotgun because even if it attracts the zombies that are fairly close to you, you're not able to stay quiet. It does mean that the zombies who are further away will not hear it, which is why it's not the worst weapon of the group. What would have made this weapon better is, 1, if it had, 8 shells instead of 4. Even better if it was magazine fed so that you could reload a bunch of the shells all at once in a faster manner. Obviously, if it were semi-automatic or if it was fully automatic, that'd also be pretty cool, but maybe Undead Labs thought it would be too out of control. But those are the things that would have made the Echo S3 quite a bit better. As it stands, it's just really not that great. Next tier, average. What was the most average weapon of the bunch? And, well, that would go to Echo S7 Assault Rifle. And really, it does belong here because it pretty much feels like an assault rifle with a suppressor on it. It doesn't have really any unique features at all. And that didn't mean that it was bad. It just meant that it was very average. The weapon performs decently, especially up close, not as much at long range, and the rapid-fire capability did mean it was able to bring the Juggernaut down faster. But what really is holding this weapon back, what's keeping it average, is the lack of a sight or a scope. Not being able to engage the zombies accurately at a longer range or to just confirm kills at a closer range, that's really what makes this weapon feel so ordinary. And hey, that's why it got the rating that it did. Next up, we've got the mind-blowing category. A weapon that really impressed me but didn't quite make it to the top tier is Echo S2 Bolt Action Rifle. This weapon has nearly everything you would want in one package. It just has one thing that really holds it back. First, what is so good about it? It's super resource efficient. Bolt action means you'll never have to spend even one part to maintain it. 22 caliber bullets, the cheapest bullets in the game. It has a great pinpoint accurate scope to engage enemies very comfortably at a medium range. And the crosshair doesn't suffer from really bad sway, allowing you to realistically engage zombies at great distances. However, it is held back by one thing, and that's that it's not very good in close combat. This is a weapon that does expect you to either stay quiet and undetected or be ready to have some other weapon at the ready to help you against close combat attackers. In other words, you're definitely going to want to make sure you're carrying a high-quality melee weapon, maybe some disposable weapons like incendiaries, or even a smaller rapid-fire 22 caliber weapon to take advantage of using the same ammo type. But either way, this is a weapon that's really going to help you save parts, save ammo, and eliminate zombies very effectively as long as you can stay in stealth. And well, that leaves us with the final category, and process of elimination suggests that it is the category with the remaining two weapons. So what are they? The first one is the Echo S1 Revolver. I'm glad I was able to give this really unique weapon the highest rating because it is the first silenced revolver and the only silenced revolver, but it basically has everything going for it. It's really only got one weakness, which is the slow reloading speed, but that can be countered just with a skill, the gunslinging skill. It's got the core advantages of the Echo S2 bolt-action rifle. It's a revolver, so you'll never have to spend a single part on maintaining it. It uses the 22 caliber bullets, which we have seen the power doesn't seem to matter against a juggernaut. No matter what weapon we use, it seemed to take about 35 to 40 shots to bring down. It's semi-automatic instead of bolt action, and it still has a sight, giving it a huge advantage over the Echo S6. I mean, this weapon basically does not have any weaknesses as long as you have gunslinging. Yes, it's not as effective at longer ranges, but most engagements in the game are going to be of a more close combat nature. And well, process of elimination brings us to the Echo S4 submachine gun as the only other weapon to share the 200 IQ Tier 1 top tier weapon spot for Echo series weapons in the Heartland DLC. This is another one of those guns that nearly has it all. Non-existent recoil. The burst fire is practically automatic if you shoot as quickly as possible. Excellent accuracy at close range. Good accuracy at the mid-range with the help of the sight. Big magazine capacity, and the 9mm bullets are the second cheapest bullets in the game. It basically excels in all combat situations. It's absolutely going to shred regular zombies. It's got the accuracy to bring down your screamers and bloaters at a distance. The rapid fire can help you bring down the juggernauts faster. Really, its only weakness is that it does take durability damage from being used, but that's true for the vast majority of weapons in the game. It does not prevent it from performing extremely well. And you can mitigate this problem by having someone with weapons handling use the weapon. Anyways, that is the list. So if you have Heartland and you don't have those top three weapons, the revolver, the bolt-action rifle, and the submachine gun, it might be worth going back into Heartland to try and farm up those weapons. Just make sure that you have someone that you trust to help you transfer them. And well, that is that. If you've made it this far, then well, geez, you sure are determined to know all the minutiae about these silly guns. At any rate, though, thank you for watching. Like this video if it was informative, subscribe for future State of Decay 2 content, and of course, remember that you don't have to be good to get good.